we go enlightened with your views on this. And of course, this is important to understand that on one hand, this is a split verdict, of course. One hand, Justice Dhulia says freedom of choice, the choice, pro-choice is what he has weighed in with, saying ultimately individual choice is paramount, whereas the other side believes that there cannot be different rules for a same set of people. Uniformity is paramount. Rules of a school would be the same for everyone, and there cannot be preferential treatment for one community. So these are arguments made in court as well. We'll have to see what happens now with the larger bench taking over. Let me welcome, joining us here on the program, our other two panelists that we have this evening. Zakia Soman, women's rights activist, and Dr. Lubna Sarwath, who's a social activist. Very good evening, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to both the ladies. Zakia Soman, you know, pro and anti-hijab arguments, we've gone through it a number of times, but now a very interesting juncture in this entire hijab row. And I want to begin by asking you, I spoke with Mr. Majid Memon just now, and what it seems, what comes out very clearly now, that when you talk about those who are anti-hijab believe that why would you not follow the rules in a secular institution? If you want to wear the hijab, you should sign up in a madrasa. What would be your view?
So first of all, I would say that let's leave it to the girls to decide what they are going to wear. So those who are politicizing this whole issue, those who are politicizing this whole debate, are doing no good to themselves or to our society or to our country. The question here is about the right to education of the girls, which is a fundamental right. It's also about right to freedom of expression and right to privacy. And even though I myself believe that hijab is not mandatory in Islam, it's also a patriarchal imposition. But at the same time, to deny education to girls because they are in hijab is outright discriminatory, and it is violative of the rights granted by the Constitution. So I wish at the outset this controversy had not arisen. I wish at the outset it was resolved within the educational institution through dialogue, through discussion between the parents and the management of the school, the authorities and the children. But unfortunately, it has become politicized and it went to the court. And now the split verdict also, in a way, is significant, that it's in that it is, you know, capturing the kind of politicized opinions, very, very extreme opinions which have come about on this issue. But at stake here is the question of education for our girls. It's a question of their future. And I think nobody has a right to play with the future of the girls. The Constitution is very clear, the laws are very clear, and I'm sure a larger bench of the Supreme Court will restore the rights back to the girls who have so far, ever since this controversy arose, who have been denied, entry into the classroom and also from writing the exam. And as a result, a few girls have been forced to kind of drop out of their education.
There's a big price to pay, Zakia Soman. I'm glad you brought that out. Let me just tell our viewers that as many as 17,000 girls in Karnataka had to skip the last annual exam that was held in March. That many girls, for them, it's loss of an academic year. And this is just one small example that we are talking about, which is why when Justice Dhulia says that it is about girl-child education, which is paramount, there must be a very, very serious reason why Justice Dhulia in his wisdom says so, because there's a huge collateral damage that we have to look at if we go ahead with this kind of a ban, which is based on wearing a particular piece of clothing. Let me have the other guest also come in here. Dr. Lubna Sarwath, what is your view? As a Muslim woman, do you feel it is to do with your identity? Do you feel it is to do with your spirituality? Or is it simply a matter of exercise of choice, irrespective of whether it is integral to religion or not?
Yes, thanks. And see, I want to tell that the entire discussion, right from when this hijab was brought in as an impediment to education, I wanted to always ask one thing. See, we have to turn the argument around. It is about whether the girl is able to educate herself donning a headscarf. Yes or no? The toppers in Karnataka who have got gold medals are all wearing a hijab, wearing a headscarf and educating themselves to serve the society. They're open about it. They're giving their interviews after topping the colleges and universities. So the point is the girl facing an obstruction in educating and empowering herself as a citizen of a country? Yes or no? No. She is happily educating herself, law, medicine, everywhere. She's in all the fields. So what is the objection? Who has the objection? Now coming to the government which has raised this unnecessary objection, I want to tell that the entire debate has to not get into dissecting the essential practices of a religion, but getting into whether the governments are actually following the essential mandate given to them by the Constitution in the directive principles. The Constitution is actually mandating free and compulsory education. Are you bringing an impediment by telling her that you remove your headscarf? Yes, you are. So the government is failing. And secondly, most importantly, see, the government is in the directive principle, it is told that every citizen should be empowered to gain their fullest extension of emancipation and also their livelihood. This is the dignity of every citizen, is all the mandate of the state government. These are not my words. These are the words of the Constitution of India in Directive Principles, Part 3 of the Constitution. So it's time we saw whether the essential mandate of the Constitution is being followed by the government or not, irrespective of, and not getting into the silly debates of what is the essential practice. Essential practice of all my Hindu sisters is to put on a bottu. Do all Hindu sisters put on the bottu? No, they're exercising their choice. And their parents are living into that. And for me, nobody has mandated me to wear on a headscarf. I took it as my choice because I found many scientific reasons in that. So many of our Muslim sisters don't want to do that.
Yes.
So essentially what it is about, I agree with you that sometimes due to patriarchal mindset, some men are imposing upon it. Some governments like Iran and Taliban are imposing upon it. So we shouldn't go to any extreme.
So
Nobody
Dr.
can
Sarwath,
impose.
the larger, there is a perception that this is a regressive thing to do. Why only women? Why do they have to cover their heads? Why do they have to be in parda? I heard clerics today, ma'am, who said things like, औरत को बेपर्दा नहीं घूमना चाहिए. So who will decide? Who is going to decide this? You will control my choice. What clothing I prefer. Isn't it a private and personal thing?
I will answer you. See, Afrida, it's good that you raise this point because, many journalists, many of your colleagues are raising these points that why is it that you're telling at one place it is essential practice, another time you're telling it's a choice, you're being hypocrite. And they're telling me, why are you not opposing hijab? I said, why do I oppose hijab and become undemocratic? It is a woman's apparel. How do I question a woman's apparel? And why are you people questioning in a woman's apparel? And why are you telling her that you should wear? And lastly,
no, because it is coming from a religious belief. The genesis is religion, isn't it? The concept is drawn from religion, which is why it is questioned that why in every religion it happens that women have to bear the responsibility of modesty and
the so-called immoral police. There is no moral police in Iran. It is an immoral police that is doing what it has done by killing more than 200 people. 200 people have died in Iran. They are no more immoral police. They are an immoral police. What is their sanction when they are going on imposing and telling that if you don't wear a scarf, we are going to kill you and shoot you? What is their sanction is my question to them. It is not Quran. If you want to bring the Quran and the theology part of it, let me quote you. The Quran tells la ikraha fid din. There can be no compulsion in religion. This is from the very Quran which they are quoting. So just because a few Maulanas are going to tell you that you
but it's a very ये भी कहा जा रहा है Dr. Sarwath कि यहाँ पे जो है because of the given dynamic, because of the current atmosphere which is so polarized, women are all the more going back to the hijab. Even women who never wanted to wear it are wearing it to assert their religious identity because the environment is such. It's quite the opposite in Iran. I mean, it's an Islamic nation and their women have come out and said, we don't want to wear the hijab anymore. The dynamic is very different here. Here you have a very polarized environment where people are now all the more exerting their religious identity, feeling that this is not the right time to give up the hijab. This is the time to adopt the hijab. Do you think that is one reason why this has become such a highly contentious issue?
I'll tell you one thing. First of all, I take a serious objection when the media people like you, with due respect to your opinion, are calling the hijab, the wearing of a headscarf, as I'm doing, you're calling it a regressive practice and also comparing it to sati. I really fail to understand and comprehend, you know.
No, that's a point of view. There is
okay.
there is a certain set of opinion that believes that why should a woman have to cover up? What is the basic logic behind it? What is the primary logic behind it? That she has to cover her head and cover her head.
Yes, has to mat boliye. See, what is mentioned in Surah Noor in chapter 24 of the Quran, about the first it's mentioned about the male and then it's mentioned of the female. We are not getting into the Quranic discussion. We can definitely have that as a separate half-an-hour discussion where I would like to spell out all that is written in the Quran, which so many of our sisters know. So what I'm telling is that essentially, while exhorting that the modesty in dressing and modesty in the nazar of a male and a female, which is also carried over by the Verma Commission in voyeuring and other things. So what I'm telling is that it is not, while the exhaustion is there to cover properly, to cover over yourselves, it is nowhere mandated, and it is clearly written, there is la ikraha fid din. That is a part of the Quran. That means there is no compulsion religion. Maulanas don't tell you this. Maulanas will tell you something else. What Maulanas tell is not essentially the religion, right? Maulana's told about triple talaq. Is it there in the Quran? It is not there in the Quran.
Let it be about choice. Zakia Soman, do you also agree? You know, see, these opinions can vary. I can think Karwa Chauth is a regressive practice. You may think it is not a regressive practice. It is a spiritual practice. I mean, who is really entitled to take that moral high ground here?
So it is a lot of patriarchy and a lot of misogyny passes off in our society in the name of religion. And this applies not just to the Muslim community, it applies to all communities. So, but relatively, the Muslim community being a minority, and also, as very rightly pointed out, you know, the kind of polarized times that we are living in today, there's a kind of a harking back to the religious identity. And hijab has come back kind of in fashion. And although our grandmothers did not wear hijab, a lot of young girls today are wearing the hijab. So that is that's our reality. So South Asia was, you know, hijab was unknown in South Asia and in our country, in the entire Indian subcontinent. But now it has come back in a big way. A lot has to do in the conservatism and patriarchy, which is masquerading as religion. But part of it also has to do, given the politics of
absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just going to say that if people stop voting along religious lines, it will spell a lot of trouble for a lot of people, isn't it? So to keep the pot boiling, to stoke this fire, certain vested interests have fomented trouble. Let's not lose sight of that. It's very, very clear. But I'm glad you pointed out that even in a Muslim family, I've seen one girl adopting the hijab, the other girl wears a crop top and jeans. So it is a matter of choice from what I can see. But I'll, of course, have to wrap up here. Thank you to the ladies for joining us on this interesting conversation.